Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and if everything went right, I'm back at my desk after 10 days of vacation while you're listening to this. The plans of while I'm recording this are to fly to DC to do some uplifting things like see the Holocaust Museum and the Smithsonian. Then, I will drink too many beers with my high school friends, wake up on Saturday, and head to Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. I'm pretty sure I've told you many times how great I am at beach games. Ring toss and skee ball are staples in my life there, and I've won 10 free skee ball games a day for life on multiple occasions on the boardwalk. Unfortunately, the arcade where I won these 10 free games was purchased and the name changed, and they don't honor my free skee ball for life games anymore, which I did the math around. And if I lived at the beach and I lived till 70 years old and went every day to the arcade, those 10 free games would be worth $15,000 by the time I died. So it is worth a pretty penny, and I feel like I've had them taken from me. But I'm not going to be pursuing any legal action about skee ball, because while I care about it, I don't care that much. But what I'm best at the beach is Pop-A-Shot. And I'm not going to call myself unbeatable, because I've seen internet videos of people who are better than me, and my cousin has beaten me once in the past 15 years, and I know he's pretty bummed on that. But on the boardwalk, I don't think there are many people better. I'm the king. I usually set the high score in a game or two and can play about 7 games a day before my performance starts falling off because my arms get tired. Really, what a loser I am. Like, the best things I can do in life are playing Pop-A-Shot, and I can drink a beer really, really fast too. Those of you who saw me do my beer drinking challenges back during the pandemic can vouch for that. And if you're wondering, I'm not planning on bringing that challenge back. Unless you email me at mike@thepowellmovement and plead me your case of why I should go head-to-head against you in a beer chugging match. So I will be drinking many beers on this trip, and this vacation also means another week with family. This is always interesting to me, and there are always issues around it. And while it would be fun to bring them up in the intro, I'm a lot smarter than that. The only thing I'm going to bring up about family is that my 13-year-old will be bringing a friend this year. And I guess that's the benefit of being an only child. You can bring a friend. And I'm so psyched for the both of them. They'll be in a small, semi-enclosed area, the boardwalk, and they'll be out until midnight doing as they please. And while one can never be sure, I believe my kid is a much better kid than I was when I was growing up, and he makes much better decisions. If I were on that boardwalk with a friend, I would get in a lot of trouble for something. I'm not sure what. But my fingers are crossed that my child and his friend will make the right decisions and nothing interesting happens. But if something crazy happens, you'll most likely hear about it next week. That's my intro this week, and there's no complaining out of me as I'm recording this episode about 2 weeks before it goes live. So everything I would normally complain about ended up in last week's episode. Lucky you. What I do need to do now, though, is tease the show for this week, and it's part 2 of Inappropriate Questions from the Vault, the sponsored years. Here, you're going to get little backstories on the people that I interviewed for my Powder Show Sponsored, and then you'll get the best of the inappropriate questions that I pulled off the internet 6 years ago when Powder canceled the sponsored podcast. I'll also finish the backstory of me working with Powder on the podcast and how that ended. So this show brings a lot of funny stories together, along with the backstory of working with a print group that had lost its way. And you know what? While I complain about Powder here and there, it's because of how I was treated by some of the staff at the time. But for the most part, I loved the people that worked there, trusted some of them, and thought all of them, especially the ones who were writing the stories, were incredibly talented journalists. I just wish they had the right leadership to point them in the right direction. If they did, I do believe they would still be here today. But instead, they did. Wah, wah, wah. Now it's time for my repetitive reminder that I continually deliver. I'd love for you to follow me on Instagram @thepowellmovement so you can see all of my stupid life play out in real time. Actually, I only put the highlights, lowlights, and podcast information on the gram, so it's usually not boring. So a follow is appreciated there. What else is appreciated is if you tell a friend about the show. It really does help the podcast grow. And you know what else helps? Posting about the podcast on social media. If you like the show, tell some people via a post and tag me. If I read that post on the outro of the show, you'll get a free limited edition Powell Movement beanie. And finally, the most important thing is supporting my sponsors who make the show happen, because I want to keep this thing going for years and years, and these brands have really helped me do that. The brands are Stanley, Peter Glenn Ski & Sports, Elan Skis, Rollerblade, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Now, let's jump into Inappropriate Questions from the Vault. I'm going to start this episode out with one of the more badass skiers of the past decade, a dude whose tricks in the backcountry continue to blow people's minds. And when I recorded with Karl Fostvedt 7 years ago, he was known to the underground of the ski world as a badass, but he hadn't received the exposure he needed to be a household name in the ski industry. And that was a bummer to me, because years before we interviewed, I and many others at K2 were working on trying to get Karl to leave his then sponsor ON3P and join the K2 program. We were going to throw a bunch of money at him, but Karl is a core dude, and while he respected what we were trying to do, he politely declined. He was as loyal as they come, and was staying true to his mountain dirtbaggery. And being a ski dirtbag is important to Karl. And when he was putting together his questions for Caroline Gleich, he didn't know what to think of her. A lot of what he saw of her career was ski modeling, but Caroline had already made the pivot to becoming a badass ski mountaineer, and Karl wanted to know a little more about her dirtbag level.
All right, question number 2. This will go off the ski model thing. I feel like there's some sort of dirtbag rite of passage that you have to achieve to really be a respectable pro skier. And I want to know, what's the longest you've ever gone without showering?
And I think this is a great question for you, Caroline, because like Karl said, there's a dirtbag rite of passage. And Karl wants to know how long you've gone without showering. But I'd want to know some of the other dirtbag qualities that you have too, or that you've picked up along the days of skiing.
Well, I actually haven't gone that long without showering because I will improvise a shower after about 5 days. So I think 5 days is the longest.
Okay, so that's not terrible by any means. And what dirtbag qualities have you picked up through the ski industry that is now part of your being?
One thing is that I can pee almost anywhere in front of people. I'll just ask them to turn around, because when you're on a big alpine climb, or especially a multi-pitch rock climb in the summer and you're really high up, you just gotta drop trowel wherever you are and go, sometimes in front of people or right on a vertical wall. So I can pee anywhere. And then also, if you're gonna climb Mount Whitney or in these other places, you have to carry your poop out in a bag. So I can shit in a bag.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Gives you a lot of freedom in the mountains to be able to go anywhere.
I like just the candidness.
I can shit in a bag and I can carry it out.
All right.
So we found out that Caroline can shit in a bag, and while I clean up dog shit in a bag a ton, I don't think I've ever shit in a bag, like Caroline mentioned. But one thing I've learned from cleaning dog shit is that if it's cold outside, that warm bag of crap feels pretty nice against your skin for a few minutes, and then it doesn't. I'm guessing the same is true for human shit, but we didn't ask that question. Karl's next question, though, is something that I really love. It's something that I've asked many people about on the podcast before, and Karl wanted to keep the questioning going. The topic is about soaking, and this is something that I hear Mormons in Utah do quite regularly. And in ski terms, I hear it's done on both the front side as well as the back side. Now, I've never been a soaker. I like the real shit. And religion doesn't play anything into this, although soaking is predominantly a Mormon thing from what I gather. And for those of you that are confused right now and have no idea what soaking is, well, I'll tell you. It's kind of like sex, but without any motion. Think insertion only and then total stillness. I don't know how a man can pull that off, but I guess plenty of Mormons do. And if they don't, I guess they get married and then have 30 children. And I'm not trying to clown their religion, because I respect all religions even though I don't agree with them all. But either way, I thank Karl for bringing up the soaking topic, because we love to hear about it, and let's hear him ask Caroline Gleich about her soaking preferences.
Number 3, have you ever soaked? We got to keep that one going.
I think in Caroline's case, she wouldn't actually soak. I guess she would be part of the thing to soak, but she would be I don't know, how do you compare it? It's like a pencil going into the pencil sharpener. The pencil would be soaking inside the pencil sharpener, and I would look at Caroline more as the pencil sharpener than the pencil in this case. But has she ever been a part of soaking, I think, is the question. So Caroline, Karl knew that you lived in Utah, and he had heard of the term soaking, and I know he's wanted to soak with anybody that would possibly do it with him, but no one has wanted to yet. And he wants to know if you're familiar with soaking and if you have soaked in your lifetime.
I am familiar with soaking, and I have soaked, but then it was part of a greater experience,
Yeah, so soaking was kind of the calm before the storm, per se?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. That's a good analogy.
All right, so she has soaked, but as part of a bigger picture right there.
So Caroline was a good sport for answering those questions, and it should be noted that I do not believe that she plays for the Latter-day Saints team. But the great thing about Inappropriate Questions is that when Caroline gets asked some risque questions, while she could have bowed out and not participated, she answered them like a champion. and then came back and asked some equally tough, inappropriate questions to Frank Raymond. Actually, she asked an easy question, and I feel Frank just said too much.
Have you ever been photographed nude?
Ooh, that's a good one. So there we go, Frank. Not that I really care, nor would I ever want to see. I would need reading glasses to see anything anyway, but have you ever been photographed nude?
Well, everybody's got a cell phone with camera on it, and everybody had some moments with the partner.
Well, that's not true, actually, because I have a cell phone, and I have a partner, and I don't have any odd, inappropriate photos because I wouldn't want them ending up anywhere. But what you're saying is that you've used your cell phone to take nude pictures of yourself and your partner, and that's a lot of sharing right there, Frank. Do you do this often, or is it a one-time thing?
Nah, it's not an often thing. It's just for fun.
It sounds fun. Yeah, it does, we all want to be in that situation, pictures or no pictures. And do you have a girlfriend these days? So
No,
when was the
not right
last
now.
time you took naked photography of a significant other?
I don't know. Like a year ago. I don't know. I don't keep track of those pictures.
Well, you should keep
too
track of
much.
those pictures. That's the thing, is when you have those pictures, you want to make sure they don't get in the wrong hands.
I'm not shy to show them.
All right, fair enough. You heard that from Frank Raymond.
I'm not sure if you could tell from the edit on that one, but it was messed up, and there's no way for me to change it now that I have no idea where the original file is. But this is the first and only time I'm aware of me putting out a podcast where the timing of our voices don't line up. The messed up thing is that I just found out about this while I was putting together the best of episode. So this thing sat out there for a year, and no one let me know that it was screwed up. But it's the one and only episode where I did that, and I'm going to play another clip from it. This time, Frank Raymond asks David Lesh some questions, and while the audio timing is still off, it's worth a listen because we're talking about David Lesh, and he's a controversial figure that I'll talk about after this clip.
How's your girl doing?
I mean, that's a pretty easy question. How's your girl doing?
How you doing?
I think what she meant was she might have been a gymnast back in the day, and she can probably get in a lot of unique positions. And what is the most unique position that she can get in that you've never experienced anybody else getting in? So, good question, Frank. So, a deep question from Frank Raymond there, very inappropriate, about positions that you get in with your girlfriend. And Dave, are you going to answer this one?
I mean, yeah, Frank, what's the deal? You hitting on my girl or what, dog? No, I think maybe the most interesting position that she can get in is a position of helping me run my company.
That is a very safe answer, Dave. I like it. It's not like you, though, a safe answer.
So David Lesh came through with the safest answer he could possibly give, but a smart answer. Why piss off your girlfriend on a podcast? There's no real reason, but pissing people off is one of the things that David Lesh does best. And the way that David fucks with people is so amazing. There was that one photo of David shitting in the water in Colorado off a sacred and protected log. The internet went crazy about that one, saying that Vertica's owner once again harmed the environment in an irreparable way. But with that one, David had the last laugh, as that was totally fake. Those pictures were completely photoshopped, and when it went into a court of law, I believe David ended up with a minimal sentence and fine because he did nothing really wrong. He just duped the public with his Photoshop skills. So people were quick to jump on him and crucify him, and he had done nothing wrong, and he had the last laugh on that one. But David has experienced this type of talk a lot. People hate him for his videos. People hate him for his snowmobiling where you shouldn't. People hate him for ditching his plane in what some considered a publicity stunt. But if you talk to David, it was more like, why would I crash my plane into an ocean and ruin it for publicity? And while I have always questioned that as it could be a stunt, it really doesn't make sense to ruin an airplane just to sell a couple hundred more jackets. But what I found with my podcast was the folks running Powder hated David the most. They questioned me over and over about putting David on the podcast. Why would I ever interview a rich kid like that, they kept saying. And I kept telling them, I've known David since he was a teenager. He came from nothing, and his empire, regardless of what you think about it, is self-made. And when we put the podcast out and detailed David's wild story, I still think the Powder people questioned it. And while that pissed me off at the time, I was like, hey guys, we're all journalists here and we need to have an open mind and let the facts do the talking. But they just didn't want to hear it. They wanted to hate the guy. But the funniest part about all of this is that I've mentioned that Powder was being repositioned as the New Yorker of the ski industry. Gone were the stories about athletes and travel, and in were stories about editors and writers taking the athlete's place in these stories. It was disgusting and a joke to me. It got so bad that I called the editor and asked him about it, and I was like, hey man, Are you going to get back to writing stories about athletes going on trips? Because I'm sick of reading about editors going on trips and writers going on trips because I read Powder Magazine for the athletes. And you know what he said to me? We're done writing articles about people jerking off to Cody Townsend. That's not the direction we're heading into. And that was really sad to me as I was a part of this brand now. I was associated with Powder Magazine and I was not happy with where Powder Magazine was going. But at the end of the day, the guy that most of Powder Magazine hated, David Lesh, made it to a place that I'm sure those writers considered the pinnacle of journalism. After David ditched his plane and made global news, the actual New Yorker did a story on Lesh. It was a scathing piece that they called me for comments for. I declined as I didn't want to be taken out of context on a story like this one. And while I should put this topic to bed right now, it does feel really, really good to finally say a lot of this stuff. And now that you know a little of David Lesh's backstory, it's time for him to ask some inappropriate questions. And he gets to ask them to another controversial ski figure, the legendary Aaron McGovern.
No, I don't know if I've actually ever met Aaron McGovern, but the ski industry is a small place and everyone talks, so I guess maybe I've heard some rumors of some drinking problems and stuff like that. Maybe you could respond to that.
All right, so I don't think Aaron drinks anymore, which could reflect a problem in the past. We talked a little bit about it over on Sponsored. Did you have a drinking problem? Did you ever consider it a problem?
Yeah, I had a drinking. Well, I didn't have a drinking problem. I drank, fall down, get back up, no problem. Yeah, I mean, definitely, yeah, it's a problem when it's affecting other people and your life. And sure, when you're younger in your 20s, you can go around and say sorry. In your 30s, people, they don't take apologies anymore. And when you're getting arrested a lot or, getting DUIs, then you have a problem. So I knew that I loved to drink, and every drinker has to hit a rock bottom. And once I didn't ski for Matchstick anymore, I went drinking. And that was a bad choice, and it became a problem for sure.
And was it something that you always loved, like going back to high school? Was it something that happened when you became pro? When did it really kick in that you were going to be boozing?
No, I mean, I never drank in high school. I played sports. And then when I went to college, I experimented with drinking and drank a lot. And then after college, I was a pretty good drinker. And then I moved out and started, in the ski industry. And the ski industry, partying in the 90s went hand in hand with skiing. So I was good at both of them.
Partying still goes hand in hand with skiing. It's just you're not partying anymore. And congratulations, 10 years is a big deal.
So that was 7 years ago, and I've seen Aaron a few times since then, and I've never heard of him falling off the wagon or anything like that, so he most likely has 17 years of sobriety under his belt. And the first time I hung out with McGovern was at the second Powder Awards that I hosted. We were staying at the Alta Rustler, which if you have money, or you have a magazine paying for it, I highly recommend staying at that place. It's a totally different experience than my favorite place in Alta, the Peruvian. And I say the Peruvian's my favorite, but really, I'd rather stay at the Rustler. The Peruvian is a must experience for any person that's passionate about skiing. Think no-frills ski bum action with decent food. The vibe is dive bar-ish compared to the Rustlers, but at the Rustler, I was having dinner and seated across from Aaron McGovern, and I didn't know what to expect. It was one of those menus where you order whatever you want. If you want to have 3 steaks with no vegetables or salad, you just order 3 steaks and they deliver them to you. Well, if my memory serves me correctly, Aaron ordered 2 to 3 entrees, and his food arrived to the table about 4 minutes before the rest of our food. So while I'm expecting Aaron to sit there and wait for everyone to get their dinner, I was wrong. The second the food was placed down, McGovern was eating like a savage. He must have been really starving, and that stood out to me. What also stands out to me is that he's genuinely a nice and sweet dude, but I also think he has the quality where he can unintentionally rub people the wrong way. I'm not 100% on this as I don't know him that well. And I've tried to get him to do a full Powell Movement podcast, but I think he's done with media and he just wants to live his life. And I'm cool with that. So David gets to ask another quick question to Aaron McGovern, and the way Aaron describes his childhood antics, it reminds me a lot of mine. Just bad news, but not as bad as the shit David Lesh was doing.
What is the sleaziest, most terrible, despicable thing that he's ever done that he really was not proud of and regrets doing? Just, something just terrible, tripping a grandma in the middle of the street and having her get hit by a bus, something just horrible.
What is the most terrible thing that you have been a part of in your life, Aaron?
Trick question. I mean, I went through it all too, like throwing snowballs at cars. We used to throw corn cobs at cars. One time I dented a brand new car. We used to put poo bags of gasoline on porches and light them on fire. Once burnt a porch. I've knocked some people over. there's nothing I have done too bad that I haven't been able to apologize for.
Okay.
I'm confident of that.
Now it's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start out with Rollerblade, the brand that pretty much invented the sport of inline skating. If you haven't been on inline skates in a while, you are missing out on the most fun way to get in shape. Think a full body workout without the knee pain and jarring impact of running or the expense and travel hassle of a bike. And skating can be whatever you want it to be. Adrenaline pumping high speed fun, recreational fitness, freestyle, skate parks. The opportunities for fun and adventure are endless. On top of that, there's no better way to cross-train for ski season. And Rollerblade makes getting your ski legs back easier than ever with their Skate to Ski app, which is available on the App Store. To find out more about the Skate to Ski app and all the Rollerblade inline skates, head on over to rollerblade.com. My next sponsor is Elan Skis, and I'm in love with my ripsticks. They are so fun and lively, all while remaining light and stable. And there's something different about skis designed in the Slovenian Alps by real skiers. And what's really amazing is that they built a solar power plant on top of their state-of-the-art factory. And Elan let me know that this independence from fossil fuels, along with the new solar plant, will provide a carbon sink as powerful as 15,000 trees on an annual basis. So not only will Elan Skis make you a better skier, but they are putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to the planet. To find out more about all things Elan and what they're doing with their factory, head on over to elanskis.com. My final sponsor this round is a place you can get your Elan skis, your Rollerblade inline skates, and everything for your summer fun. Think wakeboarding, swimming, and so much more. I'm talking about Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, and they have been the one-stop shop for all your needs for over 60 years. And these days, if you can't get to their store, well, you still have the same great experience online over at peterglenn.com. The site has all the brands, all the products, and they offer free shipping on orders of $49 or more, a no-hassle return policy, and they price match any reputable shop on the web. So please support the brand that supports me, and check out Peter Glenn before you buy somewhere else. Those are my sponsors, and before we jump back into the best of inappropriate questions, it's back to the timeline of the progression of the podcast. And at this point, it's January, and I've launched the Powell Movement. I now have a show that's competing against Sponsored, and the Powell Movement launched with 4 advertisers. I remember bringing this up to Powder. Like, hey guys, on my personal podcast, I'm making more money than I am with you guys out of the gate. It makes sense to bring some partners on, or at least promote something that Powder Magazine was doing. But like I had mentioned, those guys had no digital vision, and they were more focused on creating average content that no one saw with their money-losing Powder Productions project. It was at this point that I was almost laughing. Like, these guys really don't get it, that this podcast could add value to their print advertisers. And I tried to tell them that again and again, but you can only do so much with stupid. And I figured my next step would be to put a plan together for season 2 that created more revenue and value for both Powder and myself, and I would pitch it to them at the end of season 1. But I still had a lot of podcasts to put together, because now I'm doing an hour-long Powell Movement show, a 30-minute Powder show, and then another 15 minutes with inappropriate questions. It was so much work because I was still learning how to do things. But whatever, I'm still cranking out episodes, and Aaron McGovern may have had the most creative and inappropriate question ever for Lexi DuPont. Today, if Lexi DuPont is in a relationship, the world knows because it's on social media. The same was true for that time, and Lexi had dated some skiers, so Aaron McGovern played off that in absolutely brilliant fashion.
Okay, question number 1, Lexi. What are the biggest pro skier skis you've ever seen? 12 inches?
I love this question. I see what you did there. I think it's amazing. I can't believe we haven't done it before. So Aaron asked how big her quiver is, how many pairs of pro models she has, and then the biggest pro model she's ever skied on. We want to find out what that is. Great question, Aaron. So Lexi, that is a hell of a question, but I think we need to narrow it down. It's almost 3 questions. 1, how big is your quiver of pro model skis? Meaning, how many pro model skis have you drilled a binding into?
Well, they're not my own, but I ski on the Shredditor, so probably about 12 pairs of Shredditors.
Okay, about 12 pairs of Shredditor Pro models. Very nice there. I like what you're doing. And then what is the longest length Shredditor that you're comfortable, not that you're comfortable, what's the longest length Shredditor that you have skied?
Oh, God. I don't know whether to answer this. Yeah, probably a 179 Shredditor.
A 179 Shredditor.
I'm going to take this literally since the census is, I don't need to tell you guys what size pro model other things I've experienced.
Okay, yeah, it was just a question. We're asking it, and you started to answer it. So you said 179 with an emphasis on the 9.
Yeah, emphasis on the 9.
So that was really a great question from Aaron, and I like that you answered it.
That was. Touche, Aaron. Touche, Aaron.
So while those skis may have been uncomfortable for Lexi, I wasn't done asking about doing it with pro skiers. Because I had pro skier Elyse Saugstad coming up, and she's married to pro skier Cody Townsend. Now, Elyse is an incredible athlete, woman, mom, but I've always felt that she doesn't like me. I'm sure I can rub people the wrong way at times, and I've always gotten the vibe that Elyse tolerates me, but that's the extent of our relationship. And I can't remember why I didn't have someone else ask the inappropriate questions for Elyse, but that doesn't matter when I have things that I want to know about. And I had 2 important questions for Elyse. One had to do with doing it, and the other had to do with gender in the mountains. While I want to believe sexism, especially in the industry, is getting better, the only way to truly understand what's going on out there is to ask the question. And based on Elise's answer, it sounds like sexism was still a major thing 7 years ago, and she felt it. So here are 2 back-to-back questions for Elyse. We don't need any details of actually what went on, because that would be a little bit too much for me. But wondering what's happened in a situation where you've been snow camping with other people. You obviously have a husband that's there. Do other people hear? Do they mention it in the morning? What happens?
Well, I definitely think that you got to be as quick as possible.
I heard Cody's really good at that.
He is really good at that. But I think the both of us being competitive in nature, we race each other.
Wow, that's like a dream. So he's sleeping in like a minute and a half.
Yeah, it's very efficient.
Okay, well, it's a good answer for that one. Question number 2, I'm going to hit back to gender. And you have to have experienced some people that were total assholes throughout your career and did things that were gender-based that you didn't understand, or maybe you did understand and just didn't understand who that person was. And not that you need to call the person out, although I hope you would, because they were an asshole to you at one point. Tell me the worst situation where you feel like your gender has worked against you in the ski industry.
You know, I think the worst thing that was ever said to me was by an international team manager that told me that no one in Europe cares about women.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you respond to that with?
I actually was kind of silent and dumbfounded. I mean, the way the conversation was going, it was just like, really? That just came out of your mouth? I don't think I really had an answer to that one at that time.
Yeah, and I don't think you're going to find anything worse than hearing that. It just means you are nothing.
Yeah, I was pretty amazed in general that we don't think about you or anyone that has a vagina. So forget about it.
That is just crazy.
Yeah.
So hearing that women don't matter from a team manager is total bullshit. I would be so pissed, but at the same time, what does Elyse do? Lose her mind on the dude and then lose her sponsorships? Fuck, that would totally suck, and men can suck so bad at times. Especially white men like myself who have all the privilege in the world. Because really, there's no reason to be a sexist or a racist or anything like that, and I shouldn't have to say it. But these days, even though it's getting better, I feel like I still have to. And when I spoke with Kristi Leskinen, a woman who really fought for change and equality her whole career, as well as being an incredible skier in her own right, I had to ask her about gender because I knew that Kristi wouldn't hold back.
Was there ever one person who said some kind of comments to you that you were just blown away? Like, I can't believe that person would say that to me. And it just motivated you more to blaze a trail for women.
I'm going to preface my answer by saying JF Cuson and I are very good friends. We have been for many, many years. And so some of this was in good fun. But years ago, when I was filming with Johnny, I was the girl. I wasn't making anywhere near the money that JF and these guys were making. But I had the condo in Mammoth. I had the car. I had the snowmobile trailer. I had my snowmobile. I went up and got a snowmobile on this particular trip for other people. So basically, like, I am enabling this entire trip in my mind. I'm with JF and we're headed to the trailhead, and JF is notoriously late and slow and on his own program. And this one morning we're running late and giving JF a hard time, like, you know, get ready. You're holding me up. This is garbage. And JF made a comment when we got close to the trailhead about, what does it matter? You're only here because of me anyways. You're only here so that you can get me up the mountain to film.
Ouch.
It was like, you're only here to help me kind of thing. And I was like, is that so? And so we were at Sonora Pass in California, and the trailhead is 20 miles from everything. There's nothing there. And I was like, well, enjoy your time at the trailhead today.
No way.
I got on my sled and I left him there.
That is amazing. That is so awesome.
I think Chris Van Shetler, he felt bad and he went back and got him. So it was all good. But I was like, I drew a line. I was like, you just crossed it.
Chris is a very nice guy. I can see him going back and picking him up. But I like that you stuck to your guns there. Or it wasn't even sticking to your guns. You just made a point like, hey, fuck you. Don't ever say that to me again. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Kristi did not hold back. She called out one of the most influential skiers of our time, and I love the way she handled it. I mean, in some cases, there are athletes who think they can just show up and things will be taken care of for them. I'm sure JF thought that with this whole shoot. I mean, he's used to being the guy. But don't mess with Kristi Leskinen, because she isn't just another smiling handler. She's a strong woman who doesn't take any bullshit from entitled men in the mountains, and I respect the shit out of that. So while Kristi didn't need any help from men or anyone with most things, Inappropriate Questions is another story, and she had Freeride World Tour legend and former champion Drew Tabke to ask questions to, and I decided to jump in and help with these 2 questions.
All right, so he likes partying with freaks, and who doesn't? And now we will jump into question number 2.
Where have been the best free ride world tour contests? Where have they taken place? What are the mountains that you look forward to revisiting?
Okay, so Kristi's inappropriate question here is, you're traveling a lot to a lot of different mountains, and you probably have girls in every city. Which city is the one that you're most excited to go to see that one girl that you've met up with? And tell me how you met and what happens throughout that relationship. Was that right, Kristi?
Yeah, what Mike said.
Great. So this is a question for your early days on the Freeride World Tour, because you're married to a ballerina, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Have you learned any ballet moves?
Maybe 2.
All right. In your single days, before you married your ballerina wife and moved to Seattle for her, I'm guessing you did, what was your favorite city to go to? And maybe we won't talk about the girls because you're married and that's really not in your best interest, but what were the best places to party?
Sure. I mean, we can just drop the pretense. I've been with my wife for 12 years now and competing for about the same. So going back to the beginning is not going to keep me safe either. Traveling to Russia is pretty incredible. I mean, you'll be at a club and there's some backdoor meeting behind some door you happen to glance through with a bunch of vodka on the table. Don't know if the girls at the bar are working or just really friendly, and how much trouble you get in could be the difference between coming home or not. So Russia's pretty cool, and be careful if you get involved in the nightlife.
My final question for Drew. I'm Googling him right now. Googling images. Everybody looks pretty good at the top of a podium.
That is true.
I don't know. You're forcing me to. I'm not a very inappropriate person.
Oh, well, I'll jump in.
Go for it.
Drew, you're on the Freeride World Tour and you've spent the past 5-7 years on the Freeride World Tour. We've talked about it a lot on the sponsored show, that you're sent to all these different places, put on weather hold, eventually thrown into the arena, whether the conditions are right or not. And sometimes they're not. And you guys are put out there. And I'm sure a bunch of the athletes afterwards are talking to each other saying, hey, it's crazy that they put the contest on today, but we did it anyway. And as a leader in the Freeride World Tour, have you gone to the organizing crews and talked to them about this? And what are some of the closed-door conversations that you have when the weather is not right and the athletes are thinking about that? Because I know event organizers want to have events run. They put a lot of money into the infrastructure of getting the event run on the day they want it to. And a lot of times that day doesn't work for the athletes, but you still might have to compete. What's going on through the athletes' collective minds, and what do you say to the event organizers? That is my third and final question.
That's a great question.
So I know there's a group of athletes that make up a board that work with the Freeride World Tour, and I believe you're on that. Can you tell us about some of the conversations you have about weather and safety?
Yeah, totally. It's definitely the crux of our sport, is fulfilling obligations to the partners, producing an event when and where we say we're going to, versus trying to show the type of skiing that we all train to do and riding the mountains in the conditions that we aim for. And those two goals do not align all the time. For example, we're supposed to be heading to Austria in a week. Austria's had a really rough snow year. We've seen pictures of the venue. It doesn't look good. As far as the organizers go, they really just need to stay on the straight and narrow. They're going to wait till the last possible minute to make any changes, lest it sounds like they're giving up on some multi-million-dollar commitments they may have already made. Amongst the riders, you get all types, man. Some of the Scandinavians don't seem to be afraid of any type of terrible condition. Having grown up in the icy Northlands, they can lay some nasty skiing down pretty much any type of snow. Meanwhile, I'm living in Washington, like Sammy Lubke and Ralph Backstrom down in Squaw having an epic year. It's
definitely tough looking at buying a plane ticket to a snowless Europe when it's deeper and deeper every day at home. In the end, even the organizers themselves, despite their commitments and financial obligations and contractual things that make this all happen, they're skiers too. They're friends of ours as well. They're not trying to put us in harm's way or hold a bad event. They want to see just as good a riding as anybody else. So I still have faith everybody's doing their best to make it happen. It's just a lot of competing interests once we're trying to make these things go down.
Yeah, I mean, the event organizers are putting on these events for the athletes and to make money too, but when they're putting these together, they're thinking, oh man, this venue is going to be like this, and these guys are going to be so fired up on these lines, and they're hoping for the best conditions. It doesn't always happen, and that's just part of the game.
Just how it goes.
So Drew was a fixture on the Freeride World Tour, but I haven't heard much from him lately. While I'm sure he's still killing it in the mountains, it's interesting the path a lot of these skiers go down. Drew took the Freeride World Tour route, and even though he was a champion, it never really afforded him the life of a rock star pro athlete like an X Games or a film player would be. Is that fair? Not at all. But in reality, the way these events have been covered leaves so much to be desired that only the core ski audience is watching. And I know, it costs a lot of money to do these things right. In my former life of putting together partnerships, I would look at the Freeride World Tour property as a gold mine that can be built out and sold to the masses. But that still hasn't happened. And nowadays, the Freeride World Tour has a roadmap. Look at what Travis Rice has done with Natural Selection, or what Red Bull has done with Rampage. I know, the conditions are way more challenging in snow, but I believe they can make it happen. And if the Freeride World Tour was bigger back then, Drew Tabke would still be relevant in the ski world today. Because a dude like that is insane, both on his skis and with his inappropriate questions. And he put together 2 great ones for a dude that goes bigger than almost anyone in the world but the late, great Jamie Pierre. These questions are going to Julian Carr, and here we go.
I don't know if Julian is currently, ever was, a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints. However, I'd like to know if he's ever done anything to draw the ill will of the Mormon Church, whether it's something on the church grounds or maybe with a member of the church or perhaps the book itself.
I love the question. I think we also need to find out about soaking and if he's participated in that a bunch. So the question from Drew is, have you ever soaked? Have you ever done anything to piss off the Mormon Church? And are you Mormon? This is like 4 quick questions. Have you ever soaked in the hole near the soaking hole?
So the answer is no. I was not raised as a Mormon. My mom was. I know plenty of people, obviously growing up in Salt Lake, that are. And to me, I think who's anyone to say what really going down out there in the cosmos and the depths of creation that we all experience as life. And that is one of an infinite amount of ways it could be panning out. So I respect their belief and their culture. And I think there's a lot of great things about it. I know a lot of awesome people that are Mormon. And I've definitely, in my dating days, met some girls that were, oh, I don't drink, I'm part of the church and all that stuff. I don't know what's going on, but suddenly they turn a corner in the bed and you're like, whoa. Like, whoa. They're basically demanding the soak and more. So I'll just say that answers parts 2 through 4.
Fair enough.
I would like to know if he's ever involuntarily lost control of bodily fluids, whether it's vomit, poop, or pee, when landing off of a 200-foot cliff.
I know you said you don't feel anything during these landings, but do you feel anything warm that could be poop, pee, or vomit?
No, luckily. Part of my process is making sure everything's a tight package. So I've not shot out a little turd or something upon landing, but I think we all have our experiences of bathroom problems when we're out skiing. But no, I have not. Thanks for the questions, Drew. They were awesome.
It's time for round 2 of my sponsors, and I can't tell you how much I love the beer and other tasty beverages that the 10 Barrel Brewery creates. I'll always be a huge fan of the Profuse Juice and their Pilsner. And the craft cocktails, which have real hard A, are potent and kick ass. But what I've really been enjoying lately is their Clean Line seltzers. These are crisp, refreshing 100-calorie cans of awesomeness that's perfect for these hot summer days. My only complaint is that they go down too fast. So next time you're at the store, pick up a 6-pack of Clean Line and you'll have a new favorite seltzer. To find out more about the brand, the Pacific Northwest's best lineup of beverages, their all-time pro athlete team, and how much they support ski, snowboard, and bike, head on over to 10barrel.com. My final sponsor is Stanley. You remember them as the brand with the green bottle that kept your grandpa's coffee hot, hot, hot. While they still make that iconic bottle, they do so much more than that. I mean, they did invent and perfect the category of keeping things hot and cold, and they've been proven to be better than those other fashion brands who rely on marketing, not product. But Stanley also has all you need for your camping and outdoor needs, and they're offering my listeners the best deal they offer, 30% off all Stanley products. And to get this deal, you're going to want to head on over to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and when you check out, enter the code DRINKFAST. That's all lowercase and all one word, and you'll get that 30%. And orders over $100 all get a Powell Movement beanie. Those are my sponsors. Please support them. Now let's get back into the podcast. Now it's time for Julian Carr to ask a question. And Julian drew the legendary Pep Fujas. I worked with Pep for a long time at K2. His effortless style and creativity always made him stand out from the crowd. And I was lucky to see Pep ski in person a lot of times, and it was always mind-blowing. We traveled a ton together. I went on a lot of trips with Pep. But the one place I don't think we ever traveled together was to America's favorite hat, Canada. And Julian Carr asked the question to find out why.
Number 3 is, what's your pet peeve personally in the snow industry? And it's a 2-part question. What's your gnarliest Canada story?
Well, this is a great question, Julian, because Pep has had difficulty getting into Canada for over a decade. I don't know if that has changed. So Julian had a few questions for you. We ignored them. We just want to know about Canada. Can you get in there now?
Yeah, I've been getting in there for the past, 5 years or something. 4 years, 5 years.
Nice. And why did they not like you for a little bit? Because you're a nice guy, and I'm sure you're totally polite every time you go to the border.
Yeah, it's not exactly about that. Let's see. There were a couple incidents, actually both happening in Mammoth. One when I was 18. I drank a couple beers, and then kind of a long story, but ended up getting pulled over, and they gave me a Dewey. I think I blew a .06 or something, or .08, but it didn't matter. I was underage. They dropped it down to a wet reckless, but it didn't make a difference. I was still able to get into Canada after that, and then when I was 22 in Mammoth, me and a friend of mine thought it was a great idea. Like, we hated this nightclub called Fever that was next to the Dublin gates, and there was like a little rope that you could just kind of walk over, and we thought it was going to be a great idea to go and like rob them. So we stole a couple bottles of alcohol from behind the bar, went outside, and we're like, well, I don't know what we should do now, because all of our friends were inside. So we like went back inside, and probably within like 5 minutes, some bouncers grabbed us, and like all the lights got turned on, and we got arrested for breaking and entering, even though we just walked across the rope. And they charged us per shot that they would have made for the bottles that we stole. So it was like a felony.
Whoa.
It was absurd. We ended up going to jail for 5 days until our arraignment.
Holy shit.
Yeah, up in Bridgeport. It was pretty casual, and I ended up signing some autographs for some people when I left, which was kind of funny. But yeah, they dropped it down to a misdemeanor. The next time, actually, I was going up with Oakley. We flew into Bellingham when we're driving up, and they pulled me to the side. I think it was like 11:30 at night or something ridiculous. They just denied me. They said, "Here, you have 2 infractions. If you have any kind of 2 misdemeanors, they're at liberty to deny you." And so they did, and someone had to drive me back to the airport, and I had to go home. And then I wasn't very proactive. There's so many like hoops you have to jump through to get back in, so much paperwork. And, I was really nervous that I could get denied forever if I went in and tried, and then, they denied me again or something. But it took me like 7 years to get a lawyer and go through the whole process, get like letters of recommendation, and like, notable people to vouch for my character. I think I had Mike Goot wrote a letter, and Greg Strokes, and a few others. Yeah, that's why I couldn't go to Canada. It was really, really unfortunate.
While Pep is more a family man these days than the traveling pro shred that he used to be, he's still involved in the industry. He went and finished school, and nowadays he's running the marketing for Wonder Alpine. If you haven't heard of them, they're building skis with an algae, and you can hear all about it in the podcast I did with Pep. But we aren't here to talk about what Pep's doing. We're here to ask inappropriate questions, and Pep asked them to Colston VB. And to tell you the truth, I barely knew who Colston was when he emailed over asking to be on the show. While I normally decline these type of requests, Colston was on a Bravo reality TV show, and my wife watched it. And when I asked her if she had heard of him, she said I have to interview him. And since this was for a powder show, and it's a totally different story than any one I've had so far, I had no problems doing it. But when it came time for inappropriate questions, I looked to Pep, a guy who is so creative when it comes to snow that he's like an artist. But when it comes to inappropriate questions, he was really happy to have my help. Okay, so we're going to go to question 2.
I'm not very good at this.
You want me to jump in?
Sure. You got.
All right, Colston, you are on Bravo TV. You're on a reality TV show. I've watched it once or twice. I wish I could say it painted you as being the super cool guy within this world of reality TV, but it didn't. Most people on the show come off kind of douchey, and you had to know that was going to happen to you. It's also a career choice. Being a skier, you're not going to make a shit ton of money unless you're Pep Fujas, and there's only one Pep Fujas that I know of. So did you make this move to work for reality TV and sell out a little bit? Was it purely a money play, or did you think it would impact your ski career in a positive way? That would be my question.
Wow. That's pretty good.
Really, the question here is to figure out what was the driving factor for getting you into reality TV. Was it money? Was it fame? What was it in your head?
I mean, in terms of your question of whether it would help me in the industry, I think for sure all any brand cares about these days is Instagram followers, and definitely being on reality TV helps that a bit. I didn't think it would harm my career at all because nobody really cares about skiing itself anymore. So I think it was kind of like the next move. It was kind of like, let's conform a bit and see how it goes. In terms of looking like a douche, honestly, if I I feel like if I say I look like a douche, more people will watch it.
Yeah, you're totally right about that.
I feel like if I didn't have a single douchey moment, you wouldn't see me. I never did anything to get screen time. A few of the other people, you can tell they obviously did.
Yep.
Because that just wasn't my mindset. But I don't know, maybe if I did it again, I'd stir up some drama and cause some shit and, yeah, be a douche.
Well, in thinking about that, are any of the people that did cause some drama or get some more screen time, did it create additional opportunities that allowed them to capitalize on their reality fame even more? Because if it did, there might be a smart thing to be able to realize, hey, my window's a few years. I'm going to be on this show. I can do this, and this can bring in even more money in the long run.
Dude, so far the answer is no. Like, the question you asked me about Mark earlier and his desires for fame, he was the only one that hired a publicist. It cost him $30,000.
Damn.
So to get him on talk shows and stuff. And he did the talk shows, they're big shows, but it definitely didn't get him any monetary opportunities. So he's basically out $30,000. And it barely boosted his social and whatnot. So he put it all on the line. Like, he went as far as you could possibly go in terms of being personal and saying personal things and behaving a certain way. So I think like being on the show is one thing, but I think as much drama as you create, I don't think it necessarily, and especially in terms of trying to find a job in something else, if you've kind of made yourself look like that, people definitely care. And people judge people over nothing.
Yeah.
You look at someone the wrong way, they'll say, oh, this person, they're a douche. But like if you go on TV and do like super douchey things, I don't know how you're going to get a job after that necessarily. So I don't know about that one.
So listening back on this one, it's funny to hear what Colston thought was important to ski brands at the time. He mentions that all the brands care about is your social media following, and the reality show would help him build that. While social is important, when you're a pro skier, it's all about the skiing, personality, and the ability to sell products. And I don't think Colston helped his cause in the ski industry by doing this reality show. I mean, I can't remember him doing anything in the industry after the show, but that doesn't mean he totally disappeared. But I didn't see him at all, and I was looking. But being a top-level pro is so ridiculously hard. And I don't know if Colston had those skills or that it thing that the top men and women have. But what Colston does have is the balls to ask Kim Reichhelm, another legend in the ski business, some basic but awesome inappropriate questions.
Okay, Kim, what is the craziest thing you've ever done on drugs?
I know you've probably never partaken in any kind of drug, but we can make this up in your head. What have you ever done on drugs that you might not have ever really done?
Well, it's not exactly crazy, but it's probably the most fun thing I've ever done on drugs, which is snorkeling down in my little hideaway in Mexico. And the coolest part is you get underwater and you're swimming around with the fish and all the stuff that's going on down there, and you actually kind of think you're a fish. It's just like being underwater and swimming around and actually losing sense of whether you're actually a fish or not until all of a sudden you run out of air.
Right.
And then like you realize that you need to get to the surface really quickly. And then you get to the surface and it's a whole nother world. And all you want to do is be back down underwater with a fish again.
I love questions like that. And I may or may not have edited some stuff out of the answer, which Kim may or may not have made up out of the blue. All I know is that Kim has extended the invite to her place in Mexico to me, and I want to go one of these days. It looks like paradise, and Lotzi Hawk has a piece of property that's across the street. She's going to develop that eventually. And when I go there, I want to try whatever beer or edibles or whatever Kim was snorkeling with. I want to be a fish for a while, or at least feel like a fish for a while. But now it's time for Colston's next question, and this was another perfect one for Kim, another one having to do with animals, but these animals are predatory and eat the young.
Would you consider yourself a cougar?
Would you consider her a cougar? I would.
I'm pretty convinced that the one time I met her in Revelstoke, she hit on me. Yeah.
I would not be surprised. I mean, her ideal guy is 22, in amazing shape, and has the stamina to ski all night. Yeah, I would not be surprised if she was hitting on you.
Wow. So it sounds to me like the two of you answered the question for me. I mean, I don't really need to go there. I do like them young and fit and hot and athletic. So in that sense, I suppose, depending on your definition of a cougar, I could fall into a portion of the definition, but I do like to, I think in my opinion, a cougar is more behavioral than just the age of the guys that you go after and are attracted to.
The predatoriness of a cougar?
Yeah, I do. I love men, and because I am fit and healthy and don't act my age, I find that guys that are younger than me are a lot more fun to hang out with and certainly more fun to do sports with. I'm not planning on getting married. I'm not going to have kids. I've been married twice, so I sort of, covered that aspect of my life to check those boxes. So now for me, from a men's standpoint, I'm just looking at having as much fun as possible and doing as many sports as possible. But to prey or chase, I'm not looking at taking a bunch of guys down. I'm just looking for good company and hanging out with people that have the same passion for life and sports as I do. So if you want to call that a cougar, you go right ahead. But I just call it smart.
So that was Kim. And what she is best at is creating the most incredible once-in-a-lifetime ski adventures out there. And you can find out all about them over at skiwithkim.com. Think fun, think great skiing, think great company, think amazing nightlife. But what Kim is worst at is asking inappropriate questions. I thought she would be great at this because she can be wickedly funny. But I've asked her to come up with questions for so many people over the years, and she never does it. I guess her humor is more off the cuff and not on demand. So when I asked her for some inappropriate questions for one of my favorite people in skiing, Matt Margetts, she had nothing, and I had to jump in and save the day.
Help me out. Because you know him better than I do.
Yeah, well, he's one of those guys who's bubbling with personality. I think he's a good-looking guy. I think girls would look at him and think he's good-looking. I'm sure he's got a good body. He's in shape. He's a pretty serious athlete. And he's a fun-loving guy. He's had a girlfriend for the past couple of years, I believe. I'm not 100% sure anymore. But wondering in the best of years when he was traveling and living like a complete dirtbag from couch to couch, how many of those couches that he was staying on were random girls that he had met that night, stayed, left the next morning. And I guess how many experiences has he had with women that he's known for less than 12 hours and never seen them again?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, to be specific. That's question number 3 for you. And are you in a relationship? I'm not even sure.
No, unfortunately. I got my ass dumped a couple of years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Why did you get dumped? And I shouldn't ask these personal questions, but spill your heart to us.
Oh, I really don't feel like talking about it. I have no idea.
Okay.
She just wasn't the one, I guess. Or I wasn't the one for her, I guess.
That is surprising.
Unfortunately, because I was a good boy and I was in a relationship the whole time I was a professional skier, I don't have any of those experiences, which sucks.
Oh, I feel like I've been punched in the stomach.
Yeah, I know. Devastating. Quite devastating. Not the rock star you thought I was.
In certain terms, you're just like the married rock star who's faithful.
Yeah, fair enough. What a buzzkill, eh?
Jesus. We were doing so well.
Hey, you brought her up, man. It's your fault.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Well, we used to say back in the day, what Matt Mar wants is what Matt Mar gets. But I guess it didn't work out with that relationship.
But from what I've seen online, Marg is out of whatever funk he may have been in with that girl, and he's back to living the ski rock star life. Only these days, I believe he's a coach. And now I need to update you on the progression of where we are with the status of the sponsored podcast. I had been on calls with the Powder crew, and both sides agreed that we would do a season number 2. We were still working out the details of what that would look like, which means I put together a business plan around this and I sent it to the Powder people, and they were stoked. I had based the sponsorship dollars around the 10,000 listen mark that Powder had told me we were getting, but never showed me. And based on what I know now, I'm pretty sure those numbers were higher. But at the time, I felt like brands would only pay so much to sponsor a podcast because, like the Powder crew, the brands were in the dark when it came to digital as well for the most part. But we had agreed on a 50-50 split where I do 100% of the work, and I was psyched. And now, I was planning on recording the last month of my episodes for the sponsored podcast when I get a call from my contact at Powder. He says we're on for season 2, but season 1 needs to be cut short by a month. I guess they didn't manage their budgets correctly, and they needed that extra $1,000 that they were going to pay me. But for season 1, I had a signed contract, and I told the guy to fuck off without actually saying it, and I let him know that they were going to honor this contract for $1,000. And while that got my blood boiling, like always, I tried to play it as cool as possible, because I thought I needed the reach of a Powder magazine. But really, their reach wasn't doing me that much, as the magazine would rarely post about the podcast. I had to email them every single week begging for some social love to grow the show that promoted absolutely nothing, not even subscribing to their magazine. God, it was so frustrating. And the only way to rid myself of this frustration is to do back-to-back inappropriate questions with yet another legend, Mike Hattrup, and Matt Margetts is going to ask those questions.
What was it like in the Blizzard of Oz days, and who was the gnarliest? Can I get like a really bad story from your experience and from who was the gnarliest dude in that time frame?
All right, I think that's a good question, Matt. And one thing that I know you haven't seen Blizzard of Oz.
I haven't seen Blizzard of Oz. Like I was saying, it's came up a bunch this year. I need to watch it.
But Blake went over to Europe because he had gotten arrested in the States for having 40 pounds of mushrooms. And I think he did a little jail time. Actually, I know he did. And then he went to Europe and filmed Blizzard of Oz. And the success of that movie is what was able to move him back. But I wonder if there's any crazy stories about Blake, because I would think he was still partying over in Europe because he was on the run from the law, and why change his ways if he's free and clear in another country? So I think we should add that wrinkle. How hard was Blake partying in Europe? Because he's clean as a whistle these days.
He's clean as a whistle these days.
Mm-hmm. It's like Irish Spring soap. So, Mike, that was a question from Matt Margetts. I will preface this with, Matt is a Canadian half-pipe skier. He was an Olympian. He was on K2 for a long time, an amazing guy. If he ever won a contest, he has so much personality that he would be like a national sensation. I was always hoping for that to happen. It didn't. But Matt had never heard of Blizzard of Oz. So while he's asking you questions about Blizzard, he didn't even know the movie existed. So I told him he should go check it out. Question is, what's your craziest story from Blizzard of Oz and the gnarliest story from someone else on Blizzard of Oz as well?
Well, my favorite après-ski activity in France was snowball fights, because the French don't know how to throw. And you felt like a major league pitcher when you were fighting them in snowball fights. And I remember hitting cops in the chest with snowballs from a long range, and they couldn't do anything. Had awesome snowball fights. But the gnarliest had to be Blake, and I wasn't there, but Blake learned of something called spitting the winkle.
My mom does that.
Seriously?
No. I just felt like saying that.
I got to meet your mom. Because if you know what this is, I think it came from surfers. They would take the end of a shower nozzle, give themselves an enema, hold all this water inside, and then go up and moon somebody and spray it out. Well, Blake was planning on doing this at a party and apparently couldn't hold it and just shit himself all over the floor.
That's amazing. And if you haven't seen Spitting the Winkle, you can rent or buy The Guatemalan Persuader by Nick Mercon. The movie opens up with Glenn Blake spitting the winkle on a sliding glass door, and it will haunt your dreams for the rest of your life. I highly recommend checking that out. how hard was Blake partying at that point? Because we talked about some crazy stories, but we didn't talk about his partying. And was he going pretty big?
He was, well, full disclosure, we all were at that point. Blake was never very good at holding his alcohol. So he's loud and boisterous when he's stone cold sober. So you can imagine what he's like when he gets a few drinks in him. He was definitely partying pretty hard. And in Chamonix, it was pretty easy, too. There was Gene's Bar that I think opened at 2 a.m. You could go as deep as you wanted there. And, yeah, there were a number of nights he did. So he's much better where he is now.
Mike, were you ever arrested while you were a professional skier? And if you were, let's hear the story that goes along with it. Because I surprisingly have not been arrested, knock on wood.
I think that's a great question. And if he wasn't arrested, because I don't just want to know from him, tell us the situation where you were with someone who did get arrested, because that had to have happened. All right, Mike, during your ski career, were you ever arrested? And if not, were you ever around someone that did get arrested? And tell us that story.
I guess that answers the question partly. Yes, I was arrested, but not when I was a professional skier. I mean, I was a competitor, but nobody was paying me. I was living in Squaw with a bunch of buddies, and we stole beer, like 17 cases. We actually got away with that. It was the greed of wanting more when we climbed into the back of a tavern and started shuttling cases out of the tavern while the police were across the street on a coffee break watching us. I actually ran through the woods and got away. But my buddies got caught, and they said, we know there's another one. If he turns himself in, we'll drop your charges to misdemeanors instead of felonies. So, yeah, I turned myself in. We had to do a bunch of community service and pay a fine, and makes it hard to get into Canada now.
So now we are going into my last inappropriate questions. And while there were many, many more from season 1, these are the highlights, and I had to dig through the archives for these. I'm sure I missed a good one here or there, and I apologize for that. But these last two are with one of the most fun people in skiing, man or woman. I'm talking about Rachel Burks. She's an incredible big mountain skier who's also a realtor these days. But to me, Rachel is and will always be the life of the party. She is just pure fun through and through. The bummer to me about this one is that I did do a full podcast with Rachel, and it never aired. Hadley Hammer had a podcast with Powder Magazine at the same time that I did. She also did interview-based podcasts. And since Powder didn't share any information with me about her guest list, and I'm sure she never got to see my guest list, it was only a matter of time before Hadley had an interview drop with a person that I had interviewed and was ready to put out. So my plan was to run with Rachel's inappropriate questions, which I asked, and then put her interview out as the first or second interview of season 2 of Sponsored. And after we get through these 2 questions, you get to hear the sad end of this Powder tale. But before we get there, it's time for questions with Rachel, and I start out with sexism in the mountains, and I close it out with a party question. You're in a male-dominated industry. The photographers, a lot of them are men. A lot of the skiers you're traveling with are men. And that can get old pretty quick, but it's also pretty fun, I'm sure. I want to know what the most inappropriate thing one of these people that you're traveling with has either said or done to you that made you feel uncomfortable and you were like, that was just wrong. And please call them out.
I can't call them out, but I once had a skier. I was filming with a dude and we were both on top of a line. There was actually several different lines. Like you could go left, like middle line or right. And I asked the dude like, hey, which line do you want? You know? And he said, I think I'm going to go left. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll go right, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 seconds later, he said, you know, I changed my mind. I think I'm going to go right. I was like, all right, cool. I'll go left. And then he said, you know what? Actually, this is like a one shot. If you miss it, you won't get the shot. So I think I'm going to go ski the right. And then I'm going to hike back up and do the left.
Are you kidding me?
Well, that's what I said. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, what do you think I'm doing out here, dude? Like, wow.
Yeah.
So that was really inappropriate and it really pissed me off. But usually when things piss me off like that, it just fuels my fire. I don't roll over, submit, roll my eyes, complain. Usually it just makes me want to go fucking hit something bigger than that person did that day. So really that's all that happened.
Okay. And is that person still skiing today,
Yeah.
like on a professional level?
Yeah, they are.
Do you ever let them know how you felt?
Nope.
Okay, and can we get their initials?
No, I'm not going to give you the initials.
Question number 2 for you, Rachel. I look at you as the life of the party. Whether the party starts at 9 in the morning and you're dressed up like a beer can, or the party starts at 10 p.m. and you're dressed up like Magda from There's Something About Mary. You always send it, and you can look around the party room and you can always spot Rachel as she's the one going crazy and lighting up the night. And I want to know your most embarrassing drunk story, and not the story that you remember happening, but when you wake up the next day and people are filling you in with details where you're just like, what the hell did I do? And maybe I should think about what I'm doing with my life.
Oh, dude, I have so many of them. It's great. Like, I just think it builds character. I've got a really good one, though. And I know this because I was just looking through some old photos, and I partied in France after one of the comps. So it was post-comp in Les Arcs, France. I had partied with all of my close homies, and I didn't remember getting home, and I woke up that morning, and this is pre-iPhone, right? So I would travel around. I love taking pictures. You can ask any of my friends. I always had like a camera around my neck. This is before like it was cool and hip or whatever. Like I would always take the camera to the party in a little carrier, like a little fanny pack, but it was around my neck so I could take photos all night. And so I wake up and I was like, oh God, that was a fun party. I'm hungover, and I'm still in bed, and I start looking through the photos. And the first one I looked at, I was passed out cold in the bathtub, fully clothed, but I had my hands down my pants, and I was passed out in my clothes, hands down my pants. And it was that morning. I didn't even remember. So my buddies had to get on a train, and they had to leave early because we would just all crash. Like all the skiers would crash together, and they had to catch their train early in the morning. They went to go to the bathroom, and I was passed out in the bathroom with my hands down my pants. And they searched around and found a camera and just took photos of me passed out, and then left the camera there. And it turned out it was my camera. And so I woke up in the morning because I guess I had gotten out of the bathtub and made my way to the bed or whatever. And woke up, started looking through the photos, and found that photo, and I was like, that's pretty embarrassing. I haven't even talked about it until now, but I found the photo 3 days ago, and I was just howling. I was like, hell yeah, that embarrassed me so much of the time, and now I think it's freaking hilarious.
Are there any stories where you woke up and you were told what you did and you were almost emotional, almost crying, like, I did that? Seriously? Who do I have to apologize to?
I get the pads. Seth is the one that told me about the pads. Actually, it was when I was with you down in South America. Seth told me pads are the post-alcohol depression syndrome.
Okay.
So I get the pads a lot where I'm like, oh man, maybe shouldn't have done that. But for the most part, I think I'm a pretty happy drunk. I guess if I wake up and I feel bad and someone's like, you said this to so-and-so, I would hate to hurt anyone's feelings, but I usually steer clear from that. I'm pretty happy. I call myself a Candyland partier.
Okay.
I like to drink beer, and then I find a comfortable place in the corner and have my own little Candyland, woo, I'm happy, life is good. Nothing really deep happens.
And you are just fueled by alcohol, correct?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, nothing else. I love drinking. It's fun. Partying's fun.
Listening to that last clip put such a smile on my face. Rachel is so fun, and I feel like this clip makes her sound like the female version of Tommy Boy, which is a huge compliment in my opinion, although I'm willing to guess that most women don't think being compared to Chris Farley is a good thing. And I need to apologize to Rachel, as I have her podcast, but now it's 7 years old and dated. It really does make sense for us to put out a full show on the Powell Movement podcast this year, but that's something for me to figure out later. At this point, you're probably wondering what happened to the sponsored podcast. Well, the season ended in May as planned, and then it was time for me to focus on my show, The Powell Movement. I'm putting out episodes week after week, and I start setting up my schedule for Sponsored as it was going to launch in September. At the end of August, I have a call set up with the money guy at Powder, the guy above my contact. I believe this call will just be him and I, and he's a guy I like a lot, but also a person that's hard for me to trust. So we get on the call, and right away he's like, Mike, I have some bad news. We have decided that we're going to focus on the print publication and won't be able to do the podcast this year. I had been pretty chill the whole year dealing with Powder's bullshit, but this was the last straw. While I was able to keep my cool, I let him know what I felt. I told him, first, I felt I had been lied to, and that sucks as these lies impact me paying my mortgage, it impacts my family. It's a huge deal. But more important than that, if he was going to focus on print, and ignore the only growing property that Powder Magazine had, well, the magazine was going to go further and further into the toilet. And he stopped me right there and he's like, Mike, you may want to watch out with what you say as the whole Powder team is in the room on the call right now. And with no hesitation, I tell him and the whole Powder team that if they're going to focus on the magazine the way it is and not invest in a growing digital property, the magazine wasn't going to be around in a couple years, and every single person on this call other than myself would be looking for jobs. Well, guess what? The editor that I didn't see eye to eye with was out in a year, as he had ruined the publication in my eyes. And I don't know if they fired him or if he went on his own free will. But what I learned was, just because you're a great writer doesn't mean you're even close to a good editor or leader of people. And when he left, no one seemed to care. And then, a year or two after that, Powder Magazine closed its doors. And there are a lot of details around that. Now, I can't say that they would still be in business if they kept the podcast going, but I also can't say they wouldn't still be in business. At the end of the day, I knew I didn't like the direction that the magazine was going when I started working with them. And I surely didn't consider the leaders of the magazines to be leaders or even good representations of the ski industry. And now, the Skiers magazine is dead and the Powell movement lives on. I wish both could still be in business, but that's not the case. That's the saga, and that's the podcast for this week. For now, I want to thank each and every one of you for listening and ask you to subscribe and review me wherever you listen. Finally, I want to say a big thank you to my sponsors who make this thing happen. I only work with the best brands, so please support them. They are Stanley, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, Elan Skis, Rollerblade, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Have a great week, everyone.